Alright guys, listen here. We're going to go over my season last year. The anatomy of a failed season. A tag soup extravaganza. We're going to see what I did wrong. We're going to see what I did right. But we're going to go over that because I think it's important for every hunter to reflect on his season, his past season, to see what he did right, what he did wrong, so he can improve. Every day is a learning experience, and it just makes us stronger if we can learn from all the mistakes that we made. So, let's talk about it. What did I do right, and what did I do wrong, and why did I not connect last year? Why did I go tagless? Well, there's a number of factors. But first off, one of the factors I will not blame is the inconsistent wind. And the reason for that is every year we have inconsistent wind. Even though people want to make it out that last year we had a perfect wind the whole season. Doesn't happen. That's not how weather works. Every year you have inconsistent winds. And we had quite a few inconsistent days this year. But as a hunter, you need to modify your hunting strategies to fit whatever winds you have. Even if that means leaving a spot that you know there's a giant in and going someplace else, so that way you're not blowing them out of there. That's what you got to do. So you might as well do it. So inconsistent wind, that was not one of the factors that led to my demise this year. I can't blame weather either, weather in general, because for the first 3 days I had perfect tracking snow, and I was out there on it with a gun in hand, and I never cut a track, which is weird because 2 days later on that same piece, the bucks, according to my cameras, all the bucks moved in, and they were running around like wild animals as they are. As a matter of fact, I had a giant buck that I kind of knew might be in the area. I had him on his feet at 8:30 in the morning going through a saddle 3 days in a row in the saddle that I hunt the most, and I wasn't there. So that leads into what my first mistakes were last year. My first mistakes, I would not stay in one place long enough. Those 3 days I hunted on that snow, I was hunting for that big 10-pointer, we call him a queen, and I never cut his track. But I didn't come back on the fourth day. Had I come back on that fourth day, which was my original plan, I would have seen tracks that day. But I didn't do it. So I was hopping around to too many places. I started getting antsy. See, when you're doing these, when you're filming hunts, you tend to get this stress on top of you that you need to produce, which is one of the good things that came out of this year. And we'll talk about that at the end of this. So I felt that I needed to keep moving to try to find the sign. That is important to do at certain points. But at some points, you have to give a place a chance. Especially when you're working big woods like I'm working. So there's times where they could be 300 yards from you in a different pocket and you didn't know they were there. So we can't blame the weather. We can't blame the wind. But we can blame ourselves. I'm 100% positive that the problems that I had this year were of my own doing, and that's what caused my season to be bad. So not only was I hopping around to different spots and not really concentrating and focusing on something, I had a physical issue this year that right before the rifle season, I tore muscles between my shoulder blades and my back. So carrying my rifle was excruciatingly painful. By noontime, I was ready to leave the woods. But I'm stubborn, and I stayed there, and I probably hindered myself more than I helped myself. Had I taken a day or two off to let it rest instead of pushing myself, I might have been in better shape. But having that pain causes you not to be able to focus as much as you have to. And as everybody knows, when you're tracking or when you're still hunting, you need to be 100% focused on what you're doing. It can be the smallest little flicker of an ear that you may miss because you're not focusing. You're worried your back hurts, or you're bending, you're stretching, you're doing something which you're not paying attention. I also this year had a personal problem that's outside of my hunting career that was causing me a little bit of mental anguish, I guess you'd call it. And it was distracting me from what I'm supposed to be doing. That problem has been solved. It will never be a problem again. Down the road, Toad, we're good to go. All right, so we won't have to worry about that again. So I had mental and physical distractions which were causing the issues. Those were probably the two biggest key factors in how I handled the season. Now, you may run into these same problems. I remember reading in Larry Benoit's first book, he always said, when you're in the woods, you leave your personal life behind you. You focus on what's there. Don't worry about what your wife's doing with the milkman. Don't worry about whether or not your house is burning down. Don't worry about whether or not you're going to have money to pay for groceries. You focus on what you're focused on when you're in the woods. Period. End of story. So, next year, no distractions. None. Anyways, so, weather, wind, not a factor. Personal problems and physical problems, factor. What else did I do? Well, like we talked about, we bounced around quite a bit. The other problem we had this year was food. There wasn't a lot of food out there in the woods. The deer were moving around a lot. There was some sporadic beech nuts still in the woods that we were finding the deer eating, but the heavy mass crop that we've had in the past here in New England just didn't appear. There were spotty parts of the woods that had some apples. There was some little bits and pieces that had acorns. Problem with the acorns that we found this year is they had worms in them. And even though the squirrels were still picking at them, the deer just didn't seem to want to eat worms. I don't know. So what acorns there were wormy and didn't get eaten. And in other places, there was nothing. So you had to find ulterior food sources. And they didn't seem to be out on fields very much this year either. We didn't see them out in the open in the evenings on hay fields or anything else. So the deer were scattered to the four winds, and they were not in areas that they normally were. So it was an odd year for sure. So because of that lack of mass crop, some of my traditional hunting spots, and this is something a lot of us do and we really need to stop, is you'll have a place that you've hunted for years and you've had some good luck on, and you continue to hunt it and continue to hunt it. And I did the same thing this year, is I have one piece of property that has consistently got me a deer every year. But those years that are consistent, there's some type of mass crop on that piece of property. This year there was none, but because of stubbornness and tradition, I kept hunting that spot on and off, even though I knew that that spot was not productive and it wasn't going to be, but I kept going back, wasting time on that piece. And a lot of people will do that. They have one or two places they hunt and they'll continue to hunt it even though it gets overgrown or there's no food crop on it, or for whatever reason they shot a deer there 5 years ago, so they continue to hunt it and they're just not seeing the sign. Well, I fell into that trap this year myself out of desperation, because I felt like all these other spots that I had done a lot of homework in, trying to find a buck or finding bucks in the early season and then them disappearing, I would panic and I would run back to this spot as a security blanket, hoping magic would happen, lightning would strike again. And because I just refused to see the logical sign that there were no deer there, I kept trying it. And you see that in the videos. I'm out there and I'm just not finding the sign except for some small deer. So that's another thing. You have to be, it's a balance. So you got to know when to move and when not to move. Because in one respect, I was hopping around a lot. And in another respect, I kept going back to a place that I knew was not going to produce. That's what desperation does to you, is you fall back on superstition and tradition. Which tradition isn't a bad thing, except for when that tradition isn't going to gain you anything. So, the rut seems to be, the rut this year seemed to be on time. It seemed to maybe run a little bit later than what's normal. I didn't see a heavy amount of rut sign end of October into the first part of November. It wasn't really happening until that mid part of November to December. That's when most of the rut sign I saw happening. So that played another part in this failed season, because like a lot of people, they'll take a big chunk of the November off, like I do, and they hit it really hard that beginning of the month, and then they're hoping to find that rut sign, and they're not seeing it. By the time the rut sign comes around, you're tired, you're wore down, and you pushed yourself and you burnt yourself out before the height of things happen. So one of the things that went right this season is I finally, after checking spots and finding some sign, I found a spot that really was producing. There was a lot of deer sign. Friends of mine had a lot of good encounters in there, so I went and hunted it. And that's when I finally got on a really nice big buck, and I tracked him for 3 or 4 days and had some great experiences. Actually shot at him, missed. We won't talk about that today. I practice a lot of shooting. I'm a pretty good shot, so that was just one of those bad shots, I guess. But once I hit that spot, I only had a week of rifle season left, so I put some time into there and really hunted him hard. By the time the end of hunting season rolled around, he had moved out of there to another rut area and had gone away from that spot. So at the very end of the season, there wasn't a lot of sign in there. But it's like anything else. You have to, I complained that I bounced around too much in the early season, and in the later season, I didn't bounce around enough. I would go back to that traditional spot, and I would go to where I found the buck sign, and I had been tracking that buck, but then, of course, he moved out. All right, one of the things that I alluded to in the beginning of this video was the pressure that guys who do YouTube hunting videos feel about having to produce. Now, yes, ultimately, the whole idea about doing YouTube hunting videos is to go hunting and shoot a buck, right? Obviously. I'm in New England. There's a lot of guys here in New England that do this. It's a challenge in New England to shoot a decent buck regardless of whether you're doing YouTube videos or not. Now, yeah, tracking, it's a lot easier to get a good buck tracking because you pick and choose. But getting a buck on camera and killing it is a challenge. And that's a lot of pressure. And I felt it this year. I felt at the beginning of the season that if I did not kill a buck this season, I was all done. I wasn't going to be able to do it anymore because nobody would watch the videos. People are still watching the videos. So I broke that ice, I relieved that pressure, and now I understand that most people out there who watch these videos, at least mine, understand that, one, I'm not superhuman, and I'm hunting in New England. So they realize that you're going to have good seasons, you're going to have bad seasons. And I appreciate the fact that you guys know that the videos I'm producing are as real can get. I'm not hunting on some deer farm someplace where I can pretend that I'm out in the woods and shoot a buck, every time I'm outside. That doesn't work. These are all free-range deer, and they do what they want to do. one of the problems with having this pressure, especially when you have sponsors, is you feel like you have to produce. And sometimes that will affect the person who's hunting in a way that they will shoot something that they wouldn't normally shoot according to their standards, or they take shots at things that they would not normally do just to try to produce. And I'm not going to do that. I have standards, and I'm not going to compromise those standards. And I also have ethics that don't allow me just to take a shot, a quick running shot at something. I'm a one shot, one kill guy. It's something I learned when, I learned to shoot. One shot, one kill. So that's how I hunt. I just wish that some of the other guys out there that are doing this would realize that ethics are much more important than clicks, likes, and subscribes. But that said, I've learned my lesson this year. I'm going to relax next season, and by being relaxed and having that positive mental attitude, it's going to reflect while you're in the woods. Because like I said, I believe 100% that being positive and have a positive attitude works better. If you're feeling negative, that negative energy that's coming off of you, it doesn't just affect you, it also affects all the animals in the woods around you. And it can cause a day to be good, or it can cause a day to be bad just because of that. And that's just my personal outlook on things. And I hope that by my season being a failure, if you want to call it that, you guys have learned from the things that I did wrong. And hopefully, if you had a season like that, you're going to learn from it. So every year, a hunter, he really should reflect back on his last season, look at what he did right, look what he did wrong, and learn from it. That's the whole reason we do these YouTube videos. It's not to get rich, it's not to get famous. It's to help you guys be better hunters by teaching you things that I already know or things that I've learned from my mistakes. And that's how I'd like to have it with you guys, is that you learn something every time you watch a video, or at least be entertained. We try to entertain you. Sometimes I'm not very entertaining, but sometimes I guess I can be a little silly. Anyways, that said, that's the end of the 2023 season. That's it. We're calling it done. We failed. We're going to do better next year. We know what we did wrong this year. We're going to fix it and be better next season. So, 2024, that's coming up. We got shed season to finish up here once the snow melts. And we've got some pretty cool stuff coming. I got a new target that I'm after that I think everybody's going to like. Hopefully we can get it on film. And we're going to have a great season. So, that said, thanks a lot for watching. Like and subscribe as always. It helps get our circulation out there and help people learn, help to teach people and help them learn and become better hunters. So, that said, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you the next time.